तो कुछ लोगों ने दरख्वास्त की थी कि हम अटेंड नहीं कर सकते, तो अगर इसको आप ऑनलाइन कर दें तो इंशाल्लाह आज से ये जो नहज बलागा का प्रोग्राम है ये ऑनलाइन भी है। अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम, बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन, अस्सलातु वस्सलामु अला अशरफिल अंबिया वल मुरसलीन, खातमिन नबिय्यीन वल क़ासिम मुहम्मद, अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि वअला बैतिहि तय्यबीन अत्ताहिरीन अल-मासूमीन अल्लज़ीना अज़हबल्लाहु अन्हुम अर्रिज्स व तह्हरहुम तत्हीरा। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अम्मा बाद, अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुह। Inshallah, continuing with our discussion on Nahj al-Balaghah, the first sermon. This is the third session. Inshallah, today we will discuss the two topics in this first sermon, Khalqul Alam and Khalqul Malaika, the creation of the universe and the creation of the angels. Of course, some of these things may not make sense to us. It's above our pay grade as we speak. You know, if you go in the intricacies of engineering, medicine, or other expert fields, laymen would not make sense of much of it as to why the law speaks this way, or engineering, talks about this, or science goes into those details, because you need to become an expert to understand those sciences. With that said, the creation of the universe, unless of course this is your area of expertise, I don't know, those who study the geologists, I guess, those who study the earth, and those who oceanographers, those who study the atmosphere, those who study oceanography, they will have more expertise into the changing and the changes of the pattern of the weather and the earth and other planets around us, right? They would have more understanding of it. You and I would just have the bare minimum understanding of what goes into the creation of alam. So with that said, we're going to take it as Imam has said, without further deliberating and exploring or explaining, because of course it is that area of expertise which you and I don't really have much knowledge. Of course, this is Imam's understanding of it. Now, some of the things today, science has progressed to an extent that can verify many of these things, but still there are many things that Imam is saying science and scientists have not been able to verify. So when they have not been able to verify, it does not mean there's anything wrong in this, what Imam is saying, but the fact that, humans have not reached that level yet, where they can understand the word of Imam Ma'asum. So with that understanding, we're going to browse through Khalqul Alam, because I don't have the expertise to explain, and of course Khalqul Malaika as well. What do we know about the creation of the Malaika? Imam speaks about how and the why and the reasons behind all that stuff. We don't know much about it. We're going to take the word of Imam and we're just going to browse through it. As we move forward, towards the end of this khutbah, where Imam talks about Sifat of Hazrat Adam, and then talks about the selection of the prophets, those areas will be more relevant to us than the Mab'ath of our prophet. Those areas are something which we have a better understanding of. So inshallah, it will make more sense to us. But as far as these two discussions are concerned, we're just going to read through it as we've been doing in the past couple of sessions. So this is one way of ma'rifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We talked about in the previous discussion, just a recap of it, that this khutbah spoke about hamd of Allah, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then it talked about how insan is ajiz, humbled, that does not have the ability to understand God Almighty. Just for that, we're able to scratch the surface. Beyond that, it's not possible for us. And then whatever way it is possible to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bare minimum, is through the ma'rifat of the deen that He has created. So we explore the deen, awwaluddin ma'rifatu, as Imam said. We start understanding the ma'rifat of deen, we get into that details. From there we can scratch the surface and we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here Imam had spoken in the past discussion about oneness of Allah. How you cannot point at Him, how you cannot consider Him to be or you cannot associate any sifat, because associating of a sifat attribute makes him separate from the mawsuf. So mawsuf and sifat, these are two things. And when you divide, meaning you have confined Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you have associated limitation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah cannot be limited, and therefore this falls on its head. Then Imam comes towards, there's another path of understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is through khalqul alam. He says, Ansha'a al-khalqa insha'an wa ibtida'a ibtada'u ibtida'an bila rawiyatin ajalaha wala tajribatin istafadaha wala harakatin ahdathaha wala hamamati nafsin istaraba fiha. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He initiated all of the creation from what? From some sort of matter? Something existed? It was void. Initially, Ansha'al khalqa insha'an ibtada'a ibtida'an bila rawiyatin. What does it say? Without making use of any experiment, without any reflection on it. This does not mean that when you and I do something, we do something without reflection. No, we should think about it 100 times before we do it. When we're making something, when we're innovating something, we experiment, and then we come to, some sort of final product. Like the vaccines, their trials, clinical trials, all that stuff, until it's approved by FDA, and then it's given to you. So human error is there. That's why humans need to try all the time before they can go ahead and give out something. Allah, that's the difference between the creator and the creation. He doesn't need to experiment anything. He doesn't say, let's see if this works out, then we'll go ahead and launch it. No. He created everything from nothing, from void. Everything that He has created is original. Right? You and I, we create replicas. We had some sort of khaka in our mind, and then we created. We made it. You made a table, you made a chair, you made, buildings, you made bridges, you made other things that insan has created from, something that was not there in their mind, or they had something before, then they went ahead and created. But of course, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without experience. From void, nothing was there, without existence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. Therefore, He creates. Imam used the word what? Ibtada'a ibtida'an. Ibtada'a. It's not from, this is from the beginning. And then Imam uses another word, not over here. There's a word that is used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Badi'us samawati wal ard. Badi' with ayn. This word is ibtada from Hamza, but Badi' is from ayn. It also comes from the root word bid'ah, right? Be-dal ayn. Bid'ah kise kehte hain? Innovation ko. They've translated this as innovation as well. Wala harakatin ahdathaha wala hamamati nafsin istaraba fiha. They've translated without innovating any movement. Okay. But innovation, bid'ah, why is bid'ah called innovation? Because it's something which did not exist, and you are now adding it to the deen. The Wahhabis say everything is bid'ah, right? Whatever we do is a bid'ah. Why is it we call it bid'ah? Because it didn't exist in the time of Rasulullah. So that which didn't exist in the time of Rasulullah, if you do it, what is it? Bid'ah. And kullu bid'atin dhalal. All the bid'ah, all the innovations are misleading. And that's how, for example, things are there. So first and foremost, you didn't exist in the time of Rasulullah either. Your wujud is bid'ah. What do you argue with that? Your own wujud, you didn't exist in the time of Rasulullah. That means your own wujud is bid'ah. No, we don't say anything that didn't exist in the time of Rasulullah. If we do it today, it becomes bid'ah, innovation. If Rasul, then something that we do today, we make it part of Shari'at and religion. And we say this is part of deen. That's bid'at. Because Rasul didn't sanction it. Imam didn't sanction it. If Imam and Rasul didn't mention it and we go ahead and include it part of the religion and we do it with that concept that this is aqidah, this is wajib, this is this, that's bid'ah. But other than that, there was no driving in the time of Rasulullah. There was no flying in the time of Rasulullah. None of those things were being done. We do it. Are we doing bid'at? No, that's a false representation of the word bid'ah. Allah is Badi'u Samawat. That was the point that I was trying to make. Meaning what? That He creates. Bid'ah mean without any prior substance. He creates without any prior substance. You and I, when we create, we use the substance that is existing within this world. I made this chair, I use the substance such as the tree and the wood. I made this carpet, I use the substance that already existed. I made the wall, I use the substance that already existed. I made the car, I use the substance that already existed. When Allah creates, or He created, He did it without any prior substance. That's the difference between the two. He says, وَلَا حَرْكَةٍ أَحْدَثَهَا وَلَا هَمَامَةٍ نَفْسٍ اسْتَرَبَ فِيهَا. Neither did He need power of intellect, nor previous experience, neither movement nor thinking. He didn't need any movement, He didn't need any experiment, He didn't need any thinking. To everything He assigned a term of life. He allotted all things their times. أَحَالَ الْأَشْيَاءَ لِأَوْقَاتِهَا. أَحَالَ الْأَشْيَاءَ لِأَوْقَاتِهَا. हर चीज़ को अपने एक मुद्दत दे दी, time period दे दिया, time frame दे दिया. He harmonized its particles, gave it its properties and its form. He knew each and every creation before its very existence. Now that's the beauty of it. Difference between you and I. We too have illate gha'i. There are few in falsafa and in mantiq you talk about this. Illat feli, illat gha'i, illat. That your final product is already in your mind before you start making, right? So when you start working on something, you already have the final product in your mind. Without it, you can't make it. You want to make something, you already have in your mind what is it that you're going to make. Then you start making it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here it is mentioned that He knew. So there's no difference between Him and us in regards to He knew. But us knowing it, we don't know if it'll work out. Him knowing it, something which is a final product and is absolute. There's no challenging it. That's the difference between the two. He knew its limitations, its end, its shape, and its form. That's why when you find all of these instructions in Quran, that especially regarding insan, we'll refrain from giving any other example. Insan and alam. Allah says regarding insan what? خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ الزَّعِيفَ. Insan is created weak. Khalu'a. Insan is created, very agitated, quick to make assumptions. Bakhil, he's stingy. These are all the sifat that are mentioned in Quran. Halu'a, jazu'a, meaning jaza faza karne wala, bahut jaldi, temper lose ho jane wala. Za'if, I already mentioned, he's weak. He jadala, he gets into fight quickly. All of these are the sifat and the attributes of insan that are mentioned in Quran. Meaning what? When Allah was creating insan, He knew all these sifat will be in insan. But that's the difference. You don't find these sifat in Anbiya. You don't find these sifat in A'imma. So from there you understand that the khilqat of one insan is different from the khilqat of another insan. That where you can draw a line. Isn't that the case? Do you find Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam zaluman wa jahula? The last ayat of Surah Ahzab says what? Insan is zaluman wa jahula. Insan is zalim and jahil. Not just ordinary zalim and jahil. Zaloom. extraordinarily zaloom and, oppressive. Jahul, at another level, jahil, not an ordinary jahil, right? Jahul is, that's why you would translate the word jahul. There's sadiq and there's saduq, right? You heard the two words. Sheikh Saduq. He's not Sheikh Sadiq, he's Sheikh Saduq. Excessively righteous. Sadiq is, normally righteous. This is the superlative degree if you're talking about. Jahul is the same way. Not an ordinary ignorant. No, ala darje ka jahil. Urdu mein jaisa hum kahenge. So that's what insan is. Allah created insan. He knew about it. He knew the limitations of insan. That's why all of those things that are mentioned, you should refrain from this, you should refrain from this. Why should I refrain from this? Because we know your limitation. When you buy this product from manufacturer, it comes with a booklet. Nobody reads the books anymore. Even the car that you bought comes with a booklet. It mentions you the features of the book or of the product. It mentions these are the limitations of the product. It mentions if you go above this speed, this will happen to the car. If you don't change, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. Nobody follows that, of course. Very rarely. But even this small product needs a book. You think this entire alam, khalqul alam, does not need a book? Of course it needs a book. It needs a book, it needs a manual, and it's someone who can explain this manual to us as well. Then it goes forward. Where do we stop? أحال الأشياء لأوقاتها ولأم بين مختلفاتها وعرض غرائزها وألزم أشباحها. He created the spheres, the distances, the celestial system, and the winds. He created water without turbulent currents, mounting waves, passed it over stormy winds, and mighty hurricanes. All of this, of course, which we see as natural phenomena, right, in front of us. These are all what? Creation and work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, done under the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One does not exceed the other. This is something which is in a cycle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. فَأَمَرَهَا بِرَدِّهِ وَصَلَّتَهَا عَلَى شَدِّهِ ثُمَّ أَنْشَأَ سُبْحَانَهُ فَتْقَ الْأَجْوَاءِ. This is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then starts talking about the creation of the winds. He said He ordered the wind to shed back the water. So, the phenomena of the clouds carrying the moisture and the winds knocking it around. And then what happens? So the air gave way to the rain which fell in torrents. It starts raining. So the whole concept of, as I said, oceanographers, meteorologists, they'll understand this more than you and I will be able to make sense of it. He also created these sterile winds which He unleashed continuously and vigorously and spread it far and wide. He ordered the wind to intensify its motion and to stir the waters and waves in the ocean. It churned them like curd. बिल्कुल वो जो concept होता है इंसान फेंट रहा होता है दूध को फेंट रहा होता है all that stuff, and mixed them violently and continuously, so that the foam, and then when you start stirring like this, it creates a foam type of thing. He says, so that the foam was carried by the wind high up into the sphere. God created the 7 skies, the lowest of which, safiluha. He says, the next slide right here. He said, وَعَصَفَ مَجْرَاهَا, from the beginning. Then Almighty created forth wind, made its movement sterile, perpetuated its status, intensified the motion, and spread it far and wide. He said, فَأَمَرَهَا بِتَصْفِيقِ الْمَاءِ الزَّخَّارِ وَإِثَارَةِ مَوْجِ الْبِحَارِ فَمَخَذَتْهُ مَحْزَ السِّقَاءِ وَعَصَفَتْ بِهِ أَصْفَهَا بِالْفَضَاءِ تَرُدُّ أَوَّلَهُ إِلَىٰ آخِرِهِ. Throwing its front status on the rear, while its stationary status flowed till its level was raised and the surface was full of foam. Now this is of course talking about the phenomena that we usually see of when even Quran talks about it, as many of these concepts are directly taken from Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, when the water gushes out, and I'm sure you've seen the waterfalls. You go to Niagara or go to any of the waterfalls. When the water is falling with intensity, do you see the water or do you see the foam? You see the foam only. Water is not seen. Foam rises up on top of it. That is a natural thing. Water gushing forth quickly is going to form a layer of foam on top of it. As it moves, you don't see the water. But if it moves a little bit forward, what gets left behind? What moves forward? The foam disappears. Foam was there temporarily, and then the water is seen later on. You and I look at the world as this foam. Hum us foam ki khoobsurti, uski beauty, we fall for it. But that foam is just like a mirage. What is underneath is the water that is beneficial. The foam does not irrigate the land. You can spread the foam over a field of crops. It's not going to, or corn or any other product. It's not going to be able to irrigate the land. What irrigates the land? Water does. We fall victim to this whole concept as well. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets to the creation of malaika. I don't know if you guys have the patience to go through that as well. But if not, we can stop over here. We've taken 30 minutes. And inshallah we'll discuss this next week. Bi-awnillahi ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.